Hello everyone and welcome to this round of United Nations Academic Impacts Digital Discussion Series podcast. As we celebrate the International Day of Women and Girls in Science this month, we're also launching our article series about the intersection of innovation, empowerment and gender equality. In light of that, today we'll be speaking to Lumia's founder, Madison Maxey, better known as Maddie. Her company, Lumia, specializes in creating electronic textiles and manufacturing solutions. Just last year, Maddie made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Her projects include a variety of different clothing pieces, and we'll learn more about their functionality today. Our conversation with Maddie will enhance our understanding of Sustainable Development Goal number 9, industry, infrastructure, and innovation, and emphasize the role women play in science and technology. Lovely to have you here today, Maddie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So it seems energy is everywhere, even in fabric. In today's world, we've all heard terms like smart TV, smartphone, or smart computer. In fact, almost everyone owns one today. But smart fabric, tell us what that is, how does it work, and what are some of its benefits to manufacturers and the average consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we often say smart fabric because it tends to be more understandable. But there can be smart fabrics that are passive. What we really focus on are active smart textiles or electronic textiles, e-textiles. So textiles that can conduct electricity, which can support sensing, it can support lighting, it can support heating. Once you can support circuitry within a textile, you can have it do a lot of different things that the electronic hard goods in our lives do. And so the reason why we think that it's beneficial for consumers is that when things are active, they can really suit the consumer's needs in different ways. So when you think about an insulating puffy jacket, that's a passive material. It's keeping you warm because you generate your own body heat, and then it keeps that body heat close to you. But if you have an active heating garment that uses electricity, it can generate body heat for people who can't generate it for themselves. And so we think that there's a lot of opportunities for elderly, handicapped, and of course the general consumer and industrial workers in terms of augmenting and making their lives easier by using electronics to aid with their daily life. And in terms of textiles, our world is made up of textiles. There are sofas, our beds, our clothing. So bringing intelligence to those, we think, is a way of being able to bring intelligence to different parts of a consumer's life.
Oh, that's awesome. Now let's talk fashion. So fashion is a rather abstract concept, while the ideas behind science are often quite concrete. The two are therefore a rare mix. So what then inspired the idea behind dressing people in code?
The idea in general of dressing people in clothes?
Yes.
So kind of the historical view of apparel and fashion?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, historically, I think clothing is created to protect people and to keep them safe. Our clothing is really meant to keep us modest and keep us warm. And then with that, once you can make clothing reliably, then we start to want to augment and accent and use our clothing to signal to other people, which I think is really where fashion begins, is to use your clothing as an art form to signal and communicate to other people. Especially at Lumia, we don't talk about fashion that much because our goal isn't to design really unique, artistic, creative apparel. Our goal is to create highly functional garments that people can wear that can suit them better, more so than things that are really on the fashion spectrum where it's about the aesthetic more than it is the function often.
Okay, so in that sense, you recently had the opportunity of building the electronics for a programmable LED matrix dress for their designer, Zach Posen. How can we envision this dress? And could you tell us a little more about your experience and the contributions to the dress?
Absolutely. So I worked on the hardware for the dress as well as the firmware to have the dress visualize different animations on the LED matrix. The purpose of that activation was really to show that programming isn't necessarily writing code in a terminal. Programming can be this really creative, exciting, incredible work that can exist in clothing, that can exist in the physical world. And so that was an initiative from Google's Made with Code, where we were showing that you can code an animation in the browser and it can show up in your life around you. So I like to do a lot of creative coding. I think that it's exciting to show people that coding can be a lot more than you might imagine when you see shows about hackers and programmers. In terms of that garment being something that would get to consumers, I think it's beautiful and really exciting, but I I don't know if that's something that a consumer needs. I don't think that it's something that they need.
Yes.
But I do think that the core technology that's used to build that LED dress can be used to create a responsive, high-visibility construction workers vest.
Okay.
And that core technology behind it is what I think is really exciting.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. Now, the following question introduces the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 9 on industry, infrastructure, and innovation. How do you think your work at Lumia has contributed to the realization of this Sustainable Development Goal, number 9?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hope that we can contribute more in the future, and it's something to always work towards.
Yes.
But the apparel industry is something that relies so heavily on human labor, often underpaid human labor,
Yes.
and our consumer habits see garments as these throwaway products. So the same consumer that expects to pay $15 for a T-shirt is willing to pay $600 for an iPhone because that iPhone has function and it serves their needs. So we really think that by creating these supply chains and manufacturing processes for responsive, smart apparel and soft goods, that hopefully consumers can also be willing to pay $600 for their jacket that serves all of their needs and they know will last a long time and they can use every day. And that changes the purchasing habits to a more sustainable habit of you pay the cost of something to use it over and over again instead of this throwaway apparel, like this fast fashion process that people are used to.
Yes.
And if people aren't buying as much and if they insist on quality, then hopefully we can start to reshore, we can start to look at apparel manufacturing in a different way. And that's something that we're hoping we can be even a small, tiny part of.
Yeah, you're actually a huge part of it. It's just that I know you're trying to be modest, but you really are contributing to the realization. We really see that. Now, the next couple of you're welcome. The next couple of questions before we close will personalize our discussion to give our listeners an insight into your experiences at work. Now, you just mentioned that Lumia is more about functionality. So, you know that women are considered to be more interested in general in fashion, whereas science has for some time been attracting more men. So could you tell us what challenges, if any, you experienced while bringing the two together?
Yeah, I do think that it's just very hard for people to imagine that you can be more than one thing. And women tend to fit into the category of fashion a lot easier. So we often find, on our team, I do a lot of prototyping and building. Eski, who's our product design manager, is an industrial engineer by trade. Janet, who is now running the executive role of the business, her background is in sound engineering. And it always takes a while to kind of orient people around, yes, we make apparel, but all of us really care about the technical details of what we're crafting. And it's interesting to see how I think that assumption just comes from people pattern matching, as you said, women to this role of fashion over the roles of infrastructure, manufacturing, materials, and process, which is an important part, I think, of the fashion industry that doesn't get a lot of acknowledgement.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, you have a company, obviously. So based on your own perceptions of what a scientist and an entrepreneur are, could you explain to our listeners if you consider yourself as an entrepreneur, a scientist, or both, and why?
Yeah, I feel like I'm so unsatisfied. I don't know if I consider myself much of an anything but a curious person. But I think that curiosity can drive a lot. So with starting a business, I really wanted to investigate this space. I also wanted to learn how businesses work. I wanted to understand the fundraising cycle, and I wanted to understand how people make startups. And I think that having that curiosity really gives you the tenacity to go through the hard parts, because learning what's hard is also as important as learning what's easy. And when it comes to the scientist side of things, I dabble in science and engineering, but I'm definitely not classically trained. But I think that with being curious and wanting to explore and wanting to learn how to make things, it's a lot easier to find the piece of knowledge that I need and assemble them to reach a higher goal. Okay. So I kind of just avoided the question, but I'm not sure exactly what I'm considered to be.
Okay, of course it's a personal view, but obviously everyone has different opinions of who you might be and all that. Now let's just take a short trip down memory lane, because now you're a role model to many people, so everyone wants to know who is Maddie, who are her role models growing up. So Could you tell us maybe who your role models were growing up and what tips you would give to your 15-year-old self?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time with my parents when I was growing up, and my dad was a huge role model to me. He was just such a creative and unusual hybrid kind of person. He did everything from make the curtains in our house to electrical engineering. He was an engineer by trade, an aerospace engineer. And my mom as well is just such a tenacious, creative, energetic, hardworking person. And I think that growing up in that environment, it really made me excited to work on things and be in the world. So my parents are huge influences on me. A community that I also really like when it comes to influence is the Autodesk Artists in Residence community, because this cohort of their artists in residence, they have everyone from people who work on biotech textiles to somebody who's a professional puzzle maker. And I really love learning about people who find these really specific careers in their niches and what they think is important, and they just go after it. And so that community has been a big influence on me as well.
All right. Now our final question is for all the women and girls around the world itching for advice from their role model, Maddie. Now, taking into account the fact that this month we are celebrating the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, what motto do you think best sums up any words of encouragement you would have for women and girls interested in scientific innovations and pursuits?
Yeah, I would say that if they can do it, you can do it. Just in the sense that everybody had to learn somewhere, and the best engineers I know are constantly learning, constantly researching. Nobody is born with that knowledge. And so if somebody else can do it, you can do it too. Okay,
so if someone else can do it, we can do it too. Now we've come to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for your awesome insights and time, Maddie. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So thank you for joining UNAI and our Digital Discussion Series podcast. To learn more about UNAI and our activities, visit our website at academicimpact.un.org or join the conversation on social media at ACImpactUN.